is Morning Line.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Line. I'm Steve Hayslip, sitting in for Nick Barris this morning. We're glad you're with us. We invite you to call in. Today, we are talking about something that's been on the minds of lawmakers for some time. It's been on the minds of a lot of folks in the state, really, for a while now. Governor Bill Haslam addressed it yesterday. We've got Representative Mike Sparks, my buddy from Smyrna, on with us this morning, and we're glad to have you. We're talking about prescription drug abuse. And let's just start it off right now. How big of a problem? I had no idea this thing had reached the epidemic level that it has.
It is, and just yesterday I want to compliment the governor and the commissioner for what they call prescription for success, and they use the term epidemic, and he used the term 2 years ago at the State address, and I was impressed because it has reached that proportion. Just last night, Steve, I toured Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, and I had the opportunity to speak to probably 3 or 4 inmates there, and I asked what their charges were, and everything was drugs, and then a couple alcohol also.
But I mean, we always hear about the drugs, but you think marijuana, heroin, cocaine.
Yes.
All of a sudden, but then prescription has now come on so strong.
Yes.
We talk, and the death of Tammy Wynette and Elvis and people across our state who have fallen victim to that, but it's starting to hit everyday citizens.
Yes. One thing that they had mentioned last night, the overdose had increased, I think, from 2001 to 2010, from 422 to about 1,100. And it has reached epidemic proportions. But look at the impact it impacts the state adversely from a fiscal. It's a fiscal crisis. The governor himself, it was about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to have lunch with him, and we shared some of these issues and things that I'm passionate about, which is incarceration rate that's exceedingly high, and the drug problem. And he had told me, he said, Mike, our prison budget increased $46 million.
Wow.
That was last year alone.
1 year?
Yes, in 1 year. So what's it going to be next year or the year after? Or you take a trajectory and go out 10 years, Steve, what's it going to be?
And how much of a drain does that put on everything else in the state?
Yes. You look at whether it's infrastructure needs, roads, bridges, or teacher raises, or building schools. You can't just, what I call, legislate and incarcerate your way out of problems.
So what are the components then of prescription for success?
Well, I think he outlined 7. I don't have them all with me, but one thing that I was proud of is to hear one of the judges. It was Judge Seth. I forgot his last name, but he had spoke very passionately. He was 88 years old, and he was sharing last night. Or yesterday. He was saying where he's watched things the past 25 years. He said judges used to say, you lock them up, throw away the key. He said that was their answer. Today, he said it's not worked. I mean, look at the fiscal impact, and basically that path is unsustainable. But yesterday, it was good to hear people that had the conviction and passion to pretty much help their fellow man. And law enforcement, many times, with all due respect to them, their answer is just lock them up.
Right.
And that's not a smart answer.
To me, it doesn't feel like it is either, especially when we're not talking about illegal drugs. We're talking about things you can get from the pharmacy.
Yes.
And yet, at the same time, we're seeing more and more problems relating to the overdose and the addiction to those things. We've got Joe on line 1. Joe, glad you're with us here on Morning Line. Thanks for calling in. How you doing?
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air. Joe, go ahead, man.
I just had a question for the gentleman there.
Right, Representative Sparks?
Yes. Is he for legalizing marijuana in the state of Tennessee?
All right, Joe, thanks. Boy, right out of the bat.
Yeah, well, I was kidding someone the other day because last time I was
Thanks,
on
Joe.
here with Sherry Jones, someone called in and asked if I ever tried marijuana. It kind of put me on the spot. But my answer was I tried. I just didn't inhale. And I was like 15 years old, But no, I'm not for it. I mean, you look at the epidemic of the prescription drug problem that we have. It's at epidemic proportions. The impact that it has and the drain it has on families and the corrections budget itself. If we can't get a hold of prescription drugs and they're these are from doctors, how are we going to get a hold of medical marijuana? Now, I recently sent out a survey, and it was a mixed bag. And I will say to the caller that I predict that in 5 to 6 years a Republican will probably carry a medical marijuana bill. That won't be me, but I predict it will be someone. I feel the pulse where things are going. but I'm seeing the culture change, and it's worrisome for me because we're tolerating more as a society, and whether it's wine and grocery stores sounds great. Okay, what the media doesn't report, with all due respect to you, Steve, is our DUI arrests are up 91% since 2010. Mm-hmm. They fail to mention that component of it. Yeah. But these areas we have to get a hold of. But for medical marijuana, my heart goes out to people that's battling cancer and so forth. I predict it's coming. I mean, it polls at, which I don't base my votes on polls. I think it polls at 60-something%.
It's interesting because you're right. Your heart hurts when you see those stories of those children who are having seizures who are helped by medical marijuana. Yes. But at the same time, when we see Colorado passing it, I look at that and I think, okay, there are so many factors that I don't think have come out yet.
They haven't.
As far as how do you regulate if someone is recreational marijuana in Colorado and yet they're driving home, how is that different than a DUI? How is that
You're
different?
Right. Good point. Good point.
And I have not heard a whole lot. Maybe I'm just wrong. I've not heard a whole lot about that, though.
One thing I had called a few pharmacists in the community, detective in Smyrna that I know, and some other folks, and I was surprised at when I'm saying the culture, how the culture's changed, is the law enforcement gentleman I talked to, he's like, Mike, I'm just ready. It needs to be legal. Recreation needs to be legal. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
It's law enforcement. The pharmacist, she said, she said, it all needs to be legal. And I was like, whoa, this is a pharmacist saying this. And I was just surprised because we have such an epidemic now, and it is an epidemic. I was using that term, and I thought I was being radical. And I started asking people, is that being radical? And folks in those areas said, no, that's not being radical. That's just reality. Yeah. But in Colorado, I've called out there at some treatment centers and talked to some folks. And this is what they've told me, is that they're seeing teenagers that were once athletic, playing basketball, baseball, really involved, had energy. Now they're just getting kind of lethargic and you're seeing that. And this lady told me herself, she said, our entire town smells like pot. That's her words.
We had a story about that the other day where they were saying that it was near a growing operation. We could talk about that all morning. Hey, Shirley, I punched you up here. You're on the line?
Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks for calling. I'm sorry to keep you holding there. We've got another couple of callers as well. We'll get to you guys as well. Shirley, go ahead.
Well, put them in a rehab. It's not going to happen. A lady killed my son with heroin, and she's not served a day for that, and she's still out here on the street selling it and doing what she can do. And they got to pray to God and want to get off of it.
All right, Shirley, thanks. Great point there. And is it Denise on line 1 here? I'm sorry. Is that you? You're on the air. Go ahead. Denise, go ahead.
I blame a lot of this on pain clinics. I just had my hip replaced, and I was on painkillers for the pain clinic for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, after my hip replacement, I got home from the hospital. I called them to get something to wean me off the pain medication.
Right.
I had an appointment for April 25th. They told me to keep taking my pain medicine until April 25th for my appointment. I go in, and she gives me 5 days worth of Librium to get me off of 2 years worth of taking morphine, Percocet, and a muscle relaxer.
Ow.
Okay, it didn't work. She said I'd be over it in 5 days. I wasn't. I have lost 21 pounds. I still can't eat. And these people don't want to go through that, and so they're going to go out and try to buy them illegally.
So are you still?
I'm 60 years old. I didn't go out and do that. I just went through the withdrawals with no help, and it's about killed me. But I know for a fact that there's people that come into that pain clinic that are not in pain because you can tell by the way they act.
Yeah.
Now, I'd go in barely able to walk and hurting 24/7, even with the painkillers. But it took them 2 years to find that my hip was gone.
Yeah. But you're probably right.
I blame them. They need to close these pain clinics and give it back to the doctors where they more closely monitor.
Well, you've got a good point. I'm sure there's a lot of abuse there that probably at some point will be addressed on a legislative level. Tiffany, go ahead. You're on line 3. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I'm just sick of people comparing marijuana to other drugs. Marijuana is not a drug. Okay, it does not impair you like alcohol or narcotics. And I know several people who've been stopped by the police with weed, and the police let them go because the police knows that marijuana is not dangerous. You can pass legalization of marijuana or not. People are still going to smoke it. They're still going to get it. And the police is not trying to stop it because it's not dangerous. Thank you.
All right, Tiffany, let me ask you a question. You still with me? Tiffany? She just hung up on me. I wanted to ask her if she's driving down the road and she's beside someone who is also driving beside her, and they've been on marijuana for half the day, does she feel comfortable driving beside that person? That's my concern, is that I think marijuana, and I'm certainly no medical expert, but I think marijuana probably affects a lot of people differently, just as alcohol will, just as any drug will. I don't know, there are a lot of open-ended questions there. We need to take a quick break. We do have Cindy on line 2. We've also got another caller, so give us a call, 737-PLUS, talking about prescription drug medication, and then that launched into marijuana as well. We've got Representative Mike Sparks with us, so give us a call. We'll take a quick break and be right back.